I'm not saying that the way we define love is wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying the way we define all the emotional experiences are wrong. I'm not saying the merit system or the social structures of families are wrong and incorrect. I'm not saying that. The purpose of me sharing this understanding and experiences which I've had is to bring awareness or bring certain level of deeper understanding of why we are feeling what we are feeling.
So, Pratik, previously we spoke about conditioning in our everyday lives. And today we're going to talk about a very popular subject, which is love and relationships. And I want to start by asking you this question. Are love and relationships also perceived differently?
Certainly, love is, I think, very important emotion which every human would like to experience. And the definition of love, or what is love, is something we've learned over time as we were growing up. Whether it's watching movies, whether it's watching people around us, um, we learned what it is to be in love. We learned what it is to feel in love. We learned what happens when we receive the love. We learned what happens when we don't receive the love. It's a huge subject, and I can literally go on and on about it. But we're gonna cover some important areas where we can, people who are struggling or suffering in love, they can get some sense out of it. They can get some understanding on why they're experiencing what they're experiencing. So, to answer your question, yes, the love is conditioned experience, and what we feel, it's as a result of our conditioning.
Okay, so now let's get into it. What is the difference between conditioned love and love from the real self?
Okay, the answer is going to be a little bigger, okay, a longer. Um, how do we learn the love? I mean, there are lots of types of love, right? The love with our parents, love for our children. We talk about love as, unconditional love, conditional love, one-sided love, like if you talk about romantic relationships. And I think today I would like to focus more on the romantic relationship, because I guess a lot of people really long for that, and it will be nice to give them some clarity, and it will help them experiencing the love in a different way or in a more positive way. So, when we were kids, we didn't know what love was, right? Everyone was, I mean, the people who gave time to us, attention, played with us, we liked those people. And we tend to spend more time with them. When they come to our house, if they're like uncle, aunts, or relatives, if they come and, give us biscuits or chocolates or do something which we like, we love them, right? We create that bonding with them. It's more like gelling up with them, and we look forward to go to their house. We look forward when they're coming to our house, and there could be other relatives who believes more in discipline with kids, so they don't spend time, or if they do spend time, they ask you questions about your studies and what you do and why you don't get full marks, etc. So then you don't feel the exact connection with that person compared to the one who doesn't want to check your strengths and weaknesses. He wants you to be yourself and just enjoy the moments together. So the love doesn't, we learn over time what the love is about the family. What is love about the parent, love with our parents or our siblings. But as we growing up, I think there are multiple things happen as we grow up. There's one thing which is natural reaction or action, which is physical attraction. That is natural. That is nature's process for reproduction. Okay. And around the same time, we start to learn about love. What is love? And we see movies, we see people older than us getting married, and they go on honeymoon, and thanks to the movies and things, we also learn how to express that love. Getting the balloons and flowers and roses and cards and gifts and diamonds and you name it. And I'm not saying they are wrong. They are ways to express the feelings for the other person. But what happens if you don't find that person where you want to express all these things? What if you found the person where you can express it, but you're not getting anything in return? Because what we have learned, most of us have grown up learning that your partner completes you. Your partner makes you feel fulfilled. Your partner and you are one, right? There are promises for lifetimes to be together and all sorts of things. We learn that through what was happening around us. We learned and we create those expectations in return when we love someone, right? Now, there are different perception around this. There are some people who would want to give in order to receive love. And there are some people who grew up with the conditioning that, people come to them, they feel privileged or they feel empowered or they have some natural gift because in their childhood they received certain treatment regardless of how they were. So, if I go back to relate to some of our discussion we had in previous episodes. So as the kids were growing up, there are 4 roles the kids would pick from. One is a smart and intelligent, and the other one is a carer, which means, if one of the sibling was praised for his good marks, good grades, and his smartness, and he also was looking after the family, helped mom, the parents with cleaning and laundry and changing the bed sheets and doing some grocery shopping. He was giving and doing things to receive that attention and appreciation and praises from the parents, whereas the other sibling couldn't do the same thing as the older sibling has done. So he would become rebellious. He would become he could be ill or sick all the time, and those 2 methods were there to get the attention of the parents, getting some sort of attachment to the parents. So when they grow up, because they didn't give to receive the attention, when they grow up, they would come across as arrogant, attitude problem, or something along those lines. Not in a negative way, but because that's how their personality is. And the people who learn to give love, right, in order to receive love or do things for the other partner, they are always giver going forward. And then these people, I wouldn't say taker, but they would automatically get it, but their partner will not get anything in return, if that makes sense, because they have not been conditioned that there is something you have to give in order to receive. So it's 2 very different experience about the expectations to be in a relationship. Now, this is about conditioned love. Now, there are lots of other dynamics about the conditioned love, and as I said, we can go on and on, but I think we talk about these main 2. One who gives in a relationship, the other one who takes in a relationship. When I say takes, it's not deliberately taking, but then they just learned, they grew up with that conditioning and it just comes their way. Now, if I introduce now the love and relationship from Dhrasti, right? We see that the physical attraction is one thing. The relationship is a second thing. Relationship is where there is a give and take, receive and give, right? And that's where all the problems are when people have relationship problems is because their identity or their idea of a partner was built around their conditioning. So they are looking for those qualities in their partner. But that partner is not being programmed just like you've been programmed or you've been conditioned. So you will start to feel over time that this isn't the person I wanted to be with, because everyone's individual, everyone's different. And as a result, you have unfulfillment. So what we try, we be upset to get that attention or whatever we don't, we wanted in a relationship, or we get angry, or we have ways of getting those disappointments out, and we do that. When we look at from Dhrasti perspective, it's completely opposite, because the conditioned love, the conditioning teaches us that we were incomplete, and the only way to feel complete is by having the partner, and that partner will complete us, and then there will be an exchange of love. Now that exchange of love could be, as I said, gifts and everything, but then also care and concern and looking after. When you see yourself from Dhrasti Lens, you are operating from wholeness compared to conditioning self operating from a lack, because you are half full and the other half is your partner. Conditioned self, you are full, you are whole, you are complete. You don't need a person to complete you. And when you operate from that feeling, you have zero expectations from your partner to give you something to feel complete. So if you don't have expectations, there is no disappointments. And whatever you are doing for your partner, you're getting your joy in doing what you're doing. Now imagine both partners are operating from wholeness, right? Both partners are operating from the completeness, the Dhrasti Lens. They're both complete on their own. So that relationship becomes really beautiful because there is no expectations, but whatever they are doing and delivering for each other gives them so much joy that their focus isn't into what the other person didn't do for them, because they know that they can do everything for themselves. So that relationship, that becomes really, really beautiful experience. So for me, love is something you experience internally, and when you operate from wholeness, you would not focus into the weaknesses, or you will not automatically focus into the things the other person didn't do. Instead, you will focus into the things which gives you more joy. So, waking up with your partner and having breakfast together, you have your joy in that. But if the partner didn't want to wake up and didn't make you tea, you just got up and made your tea and had your breakfast. There is nothing wrong with it. So you don't even think at that time that your partner didn't wake up to make your breakfast, or your partner didn't wake up to make your tea. But when you're operating from lack, you are expecting your partner to wake up and make the tea. Now your partner may not have, slept well, and it couldn't feel right and didn't wake up. And that doesn't define, practically, if your partner didn't wake up to do something for you, it doesn't define that it doesn't love you, right? But because you're operating from lack, your focus goes into what you were lacking. So the moment the other person doesn't do something which you expected, at the same time, you are labeling that. And this is the difference between love from the Dhrasti Lens and conditioned love.
That is an interesting angle. And so, from that perspective, why do relationships often feel quite exciting in the beginning, but then after a few years, some people, feel bored, and maybe, they feel unseen or even taken for granted?
Very interesting and very relatable question. I think when two people meet, whether it's like a arranged situation or you met someone for the very first time, there are lots of layers into this, and as I said, I'm only gonna try and focus into the difference between the conditioned one self and from the the real self. So when two people get together, remember before you met this person, you already had your conditioned expectations, right? So when you start to meet, yes, you're excited because you're exploring the other person, right? You don't know each other. The both people are exploring each other, and you try new places, and there is something you learned in your childhood that as a grown up, the most beautiful feelings you are going to experience, it's now right in front of you, and you're feeling it, you're expressing it just the way everyone else did, right? Like what we saw in the romantic movies. And we are expressing our love from using those gestures or those activities. And then you get married. And then over time, as I said earlier, that you had a list of ideal partner, and slowly you start to discover that it's not ticking all the boxes. Because remember, when you're living the love life, it isn't just the love life you're living. You also have the things about the money, the finances, your work, your responsibilities, all of that. Everything happens at the same time, right? It's not like 5 years you're gonna just be in love, then 5 years in career. It's not like that. Everything happens around the same time. So you've been pulled by so many different strings to perform. And so as your partner, if that partner is working, they have work to do. If they are not working, they probably have even more work to do, looking after the house and making sure the cleaning and cooking and kids and whatnot. So because you are doing all of that to receive something in return, because remember, what conditioning essentially does is makes you feel that there is something you need to do to experience the fulfillment, right? So number one is money. So we run for money. Number two is love, because when you have money, you then want to spend time and experience the love, spend money to have your luxury or go on holidays or things like that. So the whole conditioned world is structured around you give and you receive. Whereas Dhrasti Lens is structured on you are whole yourself. So there isn't anything you must have in order to complete. And whatever experiences you have in front of you, you don't label them that this is good or bad. You are just taking as experience. And that is a really different way of understanding. So when number of years go by, it becomes a routine for us because we are just pulled. So, when you go somewhere for the very first time, you love that place because in that moment, that new place or new attraction, whether it's a place or a person, it is so engaging that you forget your worries. Right? And after you go there 10 times, you know it all. So you could be, if you keep going to the same place on holidays for 5 times, 6 times, the 6th time you are just doing a mechanical exercise of getting there, but your mind is still into the worries and stress and whatever you were thinking about, it's still there. So what happens is when two people are having a list of ideal partner, decides to be together, and if they don't understand what is triggering these differences, what is triggering these problems in their relationship, it is only going to accumulate and it's only going to get worse because most of the time you can't even communicate your problems with your partner because you want to avoid conflict. Again, that is also conditioning, which we will explore in a later date, within the series. But if I just focus into it, what happens is over time you both had your list and you both identified there were a lot of things is not ticking. And because the fundamental of conditioned relationship is sitting on two-way transactions, there will be lots of things you will be able to notice that the other person is not doing, or it's not that personality. And you tried everything, but you can't change it. So when you can't change it, when you know that you worked enough and you can't change that, you lose interest because you have no expectation. So you start to withdraw from it. But you would still continue with that relationship because you don't know other way or other easy way. Getting separated, or that is, it's not easy for most people to do, because that's how the conditioning has put its rules around getting separated and getting together, and this whole system, which is there for a good reason. But this is why after some number of years, sometimes, and I'm not saying to all of them, like there could be people who who were in a relationship for 50 years or 40 years, like my parents. They are fine, because the the definition of love is different for every generation, isn't it? Because it just evolves. What is out there, we learn that way. Who thought one could propose the girlfriend in a helicopter or something, right? Because 50 years ago it wasn't there. So is it a new love that has come out? No, it's a different experience to express love.
Right, I see. And you mentioned expectations in relationships. How is it that sometimes expectations become like a suffering in a relationship?
Expectations and disappointments are very, very much like a couple, which is what I've experienced. Not just in relationship, but with anything in life. When you expect something, I think 99 out of 100 times you will get disappointment because it's your expectations, right? So when we talk about relationship, you know, let's say I was working in the office and I'm going home and I expect my, so maybe my wife is expecting, or my partner is expecting a lovely candlelight dinner. And she's prepared everything, she's cleaned everything and everything. But then just before I left the office, my boss said something which really disturbed me. And my mind is now feeling insecurity about my job. So I came home worrying about it, and this my partner has prepared everything, and I can't really be there because I have something more important about, the existence. Because if my job goes away, what am I going to do? So I will not be able to engage myself as much as I would have in a normal situation, and that is going to disappoint my partner, right? And my partner is like, oh, I made all these efforts and he wasn't even there. Imagine this happens 5 times in a month or 10 times in 6 months, because we see the repetition of things that takes place, right? So over time it really, really destroys. And the thing is the communication. So if you are bonding so well, if you both are operating from wholeness, then you don't have a fear of losing each other. Most people have a confidence of being together forever is not because they are operating from wholeness, but the society or like conditioned world has created a world called trust. So you trust the other person so much that that person is not going to leave you. Now that's okay. Let's say, let's not talk about why and all that has been created. But what I'm saying is, when you trust the other person, that no matter what, we're going to be together, your communication gets better. When your communication gets better, I came home upset, worrying about what my boss just said. And I'm there and I acknowledge that, look, I know what you've done, but at this point, I can't think of anything like that. I'm so sorry, because this is what my boss said. But what most people do is their worries, they don't want to share with their family. Why? Because they love their family. And the worries they're going through, they do not want the family to think about the same worries. So you kept it in you. But the other person doesn't know what you're going through. So that partner or the family is now going to think that you are not engaging with your family or relationship. So they had expectations and they got disappointed. It could be other way around. Like you wanted, you want to, what you want to do in love, you want to spend as much time as possible with your partner. And you talk about things which makes you, feel, give that peace, or you feel understood. You want that support, you want that encouragement, you want to, you want someone when, you have an idea and you want to share with the world and they say, oh, this is a rubbish idea. But that one person will tell you that go for it. What worse can happen? You fail. But that's okay. We are together, right? But this is our ideology. It doesn't really happen in real life because we are all operating from the scarcity. Safety and security and survival is our most priority. And that is why, there could be a lot of things when you disagree with your partner. So when you expected that your partner is going to do this, and this is what you expect from it. And if your partner isn't like that, you're going to be disappointed. And you feel stuck because you can't, you could be going in multiple relationships, but then your experience may just be the same most of the time because the problem in a relationship wasn't fully because of your partner, is because of the way you were conditioned about love, the way you were conditioned about the expectation you should or you could set in experiencing love, is the way you were conditioned to give. We always complain like, no matter how much I do, it's never enough for you. Like this is very common, phrase or conversations we hear between two partners. And I think the other person feels the same, right? And why is that? They both are right from their perspective because that's their conditioning. So over time, those disappointments get accumulated. And if you don't say it out, right, it then becomes a suffering. Then we go into talking therapies, right? Then we go into healing. And I've done all those things, right? And I think I'm not saying the healing is wrong. I'm not saying the therapy is wrong. What I'm saying is you are going somewhere to most of the talk therapies. Then there are couple therapies and counseling. They're trying to convince you logically to make certain compromises or, be aware of what the other person wants and you try and give that so the other person's happy. But then if my conditioning says that love makes things happen naturally, it's effortless process. I shouldn't need to remind my partner to wish me good morning. I shouldn't need to remind my partner what I want because I want something which is coming naturally. How do you deal with that? Because then it becomes a compromised relationship, isn't it? And all this happens because you learned that you were incomplete and the love and your partner completes you. Now, if you see the entire process from the Dhrasti Lens, it doesn't ask you to be on your own. What it's asking you is that you don't have any expectations and you do what you want to. So you go to your work, you live your life the way you want to, that makes you happy and you get joy in it, but you don't have any expectations from the other person. Your focus isn't into looking what your partner is doing for you and what your partner isn't doing for you. That is your partner, is an individual, is also conditioned to behave the way it's behaving, to the actions they're taking, the way he or she is expressing the love, it's the best they have learned. So it doesn't make the partner bad person, but that's what they've been conditioned. And that's how we are, as the first person, being conditioned. But when you see the Dhrasti Lens and see the love and relationship from that angle, you are operating from wholeness. So whatever you do, wherever you go, you are not seeking anything to fulfill you because you're already fulfilled. So then you don't have complaints. and your life experience about the love will become more beautiful.
And based on this idea, because you mentioned earlier something about attraction, how would conditioning shape, beauty and what people um, define as attractive or their ideal partner?
Whoa, that's a huge question. Let's break it down into three sections, right? One is the beauty you mentioned, the other one you said is the attraction, and number three is the ideal partner. So how do we define beauty? Like when we were kids and we were playing around with people, we never defined beautiful and ugly, did we? We didn't. But as we were growing, we started listening to certain people getting compliments saying beautiful, and certain people, obviously they won't tell them on their face, but you hear that they were mentioning someone who is not beautiful. I don't want to use ugly word because it's just not relevant to how I see the world. So what is beauty? So certain shape of your body and body parts, certain color, uh, is being classified as beautiful, right? And whoever doesn't fall into that category goes into less beautiful or not beautiful, right? You could have 10 people standing here and you can put another 10 people opposite gender in front of them, and if you ask them to score how beautiful the other person is to each other, their score is not going to be identical, because everyone perceives that particular beauty differently, because that's what they have learned to see. Sometimes beauty is also attached with the character, right? How much you know of that person. But if you want to just judge the person by looking at it and say how beautiful or not beautiful you are, how do we define, like, who has that certificate? Where is that degree come from to define this is beautiful or this is not beautiful? How many times we've seen transformation of people, like, how you've seen someone considered not beautiful, and 5 years down the line you see that person and it's completely different, and you call that person now beautiful, right? So what changes? That the person is the same, isn't it? What I would say, if I were to define the beauty from a different angle, I would say a person who cares themselves, a person who looks after themselves becomes beautiful. The beauty cannot be as a result of their shape or a color, right? The beauty is how you look after. Like, you can have a wonderful house, but if you put things around all the places, it's cluttered, your house is not going to be beautiful, right? So the clean, it's what is, I would say, it's beauty. But the real beautiful, the conditioned self has a very different way of measuring the beauty. Like, how many times you see someone for the first time and your conditioned self puts a label of less beautiful or not beautiful, and you happen to interact with that person, and maybe for an hour or a day or a week, maybe that's your colleague, and sometimes after sometimes you don't find that person same less beautiful as before, but now it's probably more beautiful than how you felt before. And it could go other way around, that you might have identified a person's personality saying, oh my god, he or she is like beautiful or handsome. But then as you spend more time with it, you find it's not really that beautiful or handsome. What is that? Why that changes? Because you have a set criteria, condition criteria. So if that person ticks those particular boxes, you will define that person as beautiful. And as soon as they stop unticking those boxes, you put that person as non-beautiful, right? So I think what we grew up observing subconsciously defines the beauty. So the physical attraction is coming from the conditioning. Now the physical attraction does not really require the other person to be beautiful as per your conditioned self, right? It's a natural process, and when that process triggers at the highest level, it kind of creates a desperation in us, right? That energy needs to get out, and then it'll get out in any way or any form it can get out. So that time, I think, the beauty is irrelevant in that moment. And then if you look at the ideal partner, is, growing up, you learned how you want to be as a person, right? So you're gonna work hard, you're gonna help people, you're gonna make a lot of money, and you're gonna go on holidays, and you'll have a lot of respect in family, society, community. You have all these goals and all these ideas. You'll have so much investment, properties or shares or gold or whatever you want to name it, and you're running. And then once you achieve all of it, or in the process of achieving, there is also an emotional side which you want to share with someone, what you feel and how you feel. And to share, you want someone just like you, or maybe someone who compliments you, right? So you create a personality. She does this to me, I'm her world, I'm the only person she would look up, want to be with. I'm her top priority, or I'm his top priority, and things like that. So we create a list where we want to receive that attention, we want to receive that value, we want to feel that we matter to the other person. We want to feel that if I wasn't there, that person will not be as happy as he or she is right now. That's what we want to feel, and that's what creates that personality. If you say this is a moon, she will say yes, this is a moon, even though if it's a sun, right? So it's your ideology, and it keeps changing over time, right? Because you have a new exposure, and like, oh, I want to do this with my partner. When you have something else, well, I want to do this with my partner. And your list can just go longer and longer. And then you don't find the partner, or the partner you want, or your ideal partner. Your list gets revisited, isn't it? It could have either more good qualities you're looking for, or you want to make sure that that person doesn't have certain bad qualities which you experience while you were dating. And this process just goes on. But the process will be always there. The process will evolve over time. The truth will always be the same, that any of those experiences which you're trying to experience, the beginning of it, the root of it, it's coming from conditioning. And that conditioned self makes you feel incomplete to start with, in order for you to act externally to receive that fulfillment. So when you don't receive that fulfillment, that lack has also learned how to react when you're disappointed, and it takes you out there, right? So ideal partner comes from our ideology, like how we want to be different than others, how we want to be better than others, how we want to be successful than others, and how can I have everyone wants the most beautiful partner for themselves, right? And it applies to both gender. And after a while, we know that we don't feel the same, and we already discussed the reasons behind them. And when the things are consistent between two partners, is because they are more aware without knowing they're operating from wholeness. There could be people, I'm not saying the whole world is living from conditioning. There are people, and I'm sure there will be so many people, are living from wholeness without knowing they are living from wholeness. And the life, the emotions are very fluctuating. Emotions unstable, just like our mind. Our mind can have a million thoughts in a minute, and there could be contradictory thoughts as well. So the emotions are also like that. So what happens is what we want and what makes us happy, it's constantly changing, because every moment we're having new exposure, new information, then it shifts something in us. So what we wanted 5 years ago is invaluable today, because you don't want it anymore. And what you want today, you not have it today, and you might have it in the next 5 years, and then you're again where you were, because what you were really looking for was fulfillment. So ideal partner is also a product or an outcome of that conditioned experience.
Okay, and that does make sense. And one issue that usually arises in relationships is the issue of codependency. And based on the things that you explained, how do you explain codependency?
I think codependency is a very powerful proof or evidence that one is operating from lack. What happens is that you are so much programmed that the partner will complete you, and you've been searching for the ideal partner or a right partner. You got ways of measuring the percentage of ideal person, whether it's by the beauty or the way the person talks and interacts, not just with you but with others. Your system automatically creates a scorecard for that person. And I mean, there are different aspects. Like the people experience this. There's a phase, right, that you've seen each other. So let's talk from one person's perspective. One person has seen the other person, and this person clicked that, oh, this is the ideal person. The other person hasn't even noticed this person. So the very first thing this person has to do is come into the notice. Right. Now, based on the conditioning, the person has certain approaches which he or she will find. I mean, okay, let's put it this way. I think it's only the man who would, most of the cases, the man, the masculine, I should say, would approach the feminine. Because feminine is passive energy. It receives rather than attacks. Attacks means not like attack, but it doesn't initiate, right? So this masculine would try and approach in the comfortable way and say, hey, I'm here, and makes the communication of the intention. Then, depending on what the response is for the other person or the feminine, the masculine is going to conclude that that conversations into either a positive outcome or a negative outcome. Now, if it is a positive outcome, then it's brilliant, right? Because that's what that masculine wanted. So it goes beyond. So they start to date and things like that. If it didn't happen the way it wanted, then again, there's a different mechanism, a coping mechanism for that rejection, which we will talk later. But that other person, and now let's look at two people together. So the two people met and communicated and they started to date. Now, depending on the level of lack they are expecting the other person to complete, now, it creates certain desperation. Because when you are together, you feel the wholeness, you feel the completeness. But when you are not together, it is going to create lots of negative emotions, right? For example, your thinking, it's going to give you the thoughts of maybe she is ignoring me or he is ignoring me, right? Maybe she's enjoying more somewhere than myself, and hence she's not with me. there was a chance that she could have messaged me or she could have called me in her lunch break or something if she's working or he's working. Didn't message, didn't answer my call, or the message reply was very dry. So we start observing the communication in a negative way. Why? Because we are operating from lack, right? So when the codependency syndrome is something where you make the other person your world, that you cannot exist without that person's presence. So you become more lack. It's not even 50-50. Now the other person is 90% and you are just 10%. And if that person isn't part of your life, you are destroyed. Your life is over. So what you do in that situation is, when over time, what happens with codependency is that person doesn't have anything like that. Because when that person is, at work, is at work. And at work, the colleagues might have said, let's go for lunch, and they went for lunch. Now, whether that person should have messaged or shouldn't message, it's a different discussion. What I'm saying is that how this person who's feeling, he's more codependent, is feeling, right? So codependency can create the burden to the other person, because now this person will be quiet in the beginning, but over time that person will start reacting. So it would start with little sarcasm, like, oh, you are so busy at work, you can't even message me. I'm also at work, but I do message you, right? And this person at work is not being able to perform at the work because all he or she is thinking is what the other person is doing, because he has a fear of losing that partner. It's now, after all this time, I'm finally feeling complete, but I still have a fear of losing that person. That insecurity is a big threat to that person, that it creates possessiveness, it creates jealousy, it creates all those coping mechanisms. And with good intention, the other person would feel that it's been controlled. And ultimately, unless you realize that this is all coming from conditioning and it's a conditioned experience, that relationship will not have a longer future, because ultimately the other person would be so fed up with this behavior that the relationship wouldn't be able to continue. So what we learn from this, the jealousy, the possessiveness, the insecurities are all because you've experienced the lack in a relationship. You've been conditioned that love and the person's love will fulfill you. So you're running after it. And when you got it, you just want to make it yours exclusively. So you push it. And when you push it, it gets burst and it goes away. But in the process, when you see the person, your partner is talking to someone for longer than you think it's reasonable, okay, because you define, like, okay, this is okay, but this isn't. So you can talk to your friend for 10 minutes, but not for 2 hours. You can go out for an evening, but not for 5 days holidays. So we decide that, like, as what the person who is codependent would decide in his head or her head, that this is okay, I can give that much freedom. But who are we to give that freedom to the other person? It's not really giving freedom to them. It's our conditioned self is trying to change the reprogramming a bit to be a little bit flexible, so that can be count as you are allowing that person some sort of freedom, so that you will not go away. So it's like you're giving it to receive something more in return. And this, it's like a loop. And when you find out that they go out for the same gender, opposite gender friends and things like that, it could create a lot of insecurities, because when you were lacking, your system also conditions yourself that maybe you're not worthy of receiving love. If you had a couple of rejections, you would automatically start, the conditioned self will start to perceive that you're not worthy. You're not, you don't deserve to have a right or ideal partner. And if you then found one, then you're gonna go all in to protect it. Even if that meant that you would over control that person and that person will ultimately leave you. So this is what codependency actually does. But when you see yourself from the real self, your life doesn't change. Your wholeness is unaffected whether that person is in your life or it isn't. It doesn't make the other person bad, but then when that person is with you, you are having fantastic, wonderful, beautiful time. When person isn't with you, that doesn't bother you because you know you are whole, you know you are complete. And that way, the other person also automatically feels comfort and that freedom, and that relationship has a better future compared to the one who was codependent and trying to control the relationship and the outcome.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that in such detail. Now, you covered some of these issues like codependency, jealousy, and things like that. What about cheating? How does Drusty look at cheating or extramarital affairs?
Wow, this is seriously deep. Whatever I'm about to say, it, my intention is for people to have a better experience about life. Whatever I'm about to say is not to hurt someone's feelings. Whatever I'm about to say is not to create any controversy. I'm giving an opinion from what I've had realization about. Okay? There is no right and wrong answer. Uh, I've seen a lot of podcasts and a lot of information about the relationship and extramarital affair and things like that. I think what we are really looking for is fulfillment. And love and relationship is one of the key part where we have most of our expectations. I mean, somebody may not be materially successful, but that person would still seek love because that's what our conditioned self is seeking. So you found an ideal partner to start with, and you are with that person, and over time you had certain disagreements or a lot of disappointments which destroyed that attraction, which destroyed those feelings which you called love once. It's no longer there. But due to certain other factors, you cannot make a decision of whether to continue with that relationship. I mean, that's the only option you can think of. And instead, you don't feel comfortable because of conditioning to get out of that relationship, or you have other reasons or other pressures which you are under, or other fears you might have, which makes you stay in that relationship, but you are still unfulfilled. In order to feel that fulfillment, there is also a conditioning which says that everyone is not the same. And there's always a one right person. This is all conditioning. So what happens is, even though you understand the social structure, even though you understand the rules and your vows for your marriage or whatever you did, the inner emotional part, which isn't perceiving life from the conditioning world, right? It's emotional self, our nervous system. It wants to feel that fulfillment because this is like a core. It comes from our core, that lack. So there could be other person just like in your situation, and you end up meeting, and you might feel that this is the person you want to be with. So you actually go to feel that fulfillment. The purpose isn't always to hurt your partner. The purpose isn't to go against the society and, get a label of a bad person. I think the purpose was simply that one wanted to feel the fulfillment. And that fulfillment, they believed or they assumed that will come from that extra relationship, right? But when we see this whole scenario from Dhrasti Lens, the lack is over. Like everything we are running for is because of some sort of lack which has been conditioned in us. But when you operate from wholeness, you also know that the other people are operating from their conditioning. So whatever they are doing, which you like or you do not like, it's coming out of their conditioning. So underneath the conditioning, they are identical as you are. So once you experience this, your whole definition of love changes. The whole definition of relationship changes. Because you're no longer looking for fulfillment in a relationship. What you're looking for is that experience, the companionship, the experience which you are sharing with other being. It's no longer the conditioned partner. This is now much deeper level bonding it starts to create. And as I said, I'm not here to give my opinion, and I have no intention of doing that. Whatever way people choose to feel fulfilled is right or wrong, that is not the purpose. I'm not saying that the way we define love is wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying the way we define all the emotional experiences are wrong. I'm not saying the marriage system or the social structures of families are wrong and incorrect. I'm not saying that. The purpose of me sharing this understanding and experiences which I've had is to bring awareness or bring certain level of deeper understanding of why we are feeling what we are feeling. Because once we understand, it'll disappear. The purpose is to spread that happiness. Because the moment I had that realization of my true self and not the conditioned self, nothing bothers me anymore. I'm not worried about anything. I have no fears, and I don't have any desire to control any outcomes, because everything I'm doing from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed, I feel fulfilled. And I would like everybody to experience that. So the rest they are after, the rest they are running for, without knowing what are they going to get, they can sit quietly and experience their true self and enjoy the process afterwards. So I'm not saying that leave everything and just go to Himalayas and start meditating. This is not what I'm saying. I'm saying you can remain where you are, do exactly what you're doing, but still inside you feel fulfilled. You leave those experiences from fulfillment rather than from lack.
Fascinating. And so, lastly, what do relationships and love feel like from the real me, from Dhrasti Lens?
This is my favorite question of today's episode, because that's what I really want to share with people. That whatever we've been running for since the moment we learned about love and relationship, we always running for something. And so many people compromise accepting that this is how it is. There is like normal. Because if 80 out of 100 people has exact same experience after they got married or they're in a relationship, they feel this is how it is. And you accept the lack as truth. And you have that unfulfilled desires of feeling that wholeness, that completeness. And whether it's money, whether it's a relationship, But because we are talking about relationships today, we'll just, answer in that context. I want them to know that the lack was created as a process called conditioning. And it's coming through evolutionary process when the safety, survival, respect, attention, this is all is what we desired for, or it was mandatory in that time. But when you experience your true self, you will feel, no matter how many times, how many episodes I can go on about the wholeness and completeness and operating from the Dhrasti lens, I can say that, but it's only words received by our conscious mind. When you experience your true self, you will feel that wholeness. You will feel that completeness. You will feel that you are enough. And you were always enough. You will also realize how your conditioned self made you go through the roller coaster of emotions and pain and hurt in the lifetime, and how you're experiencing that. You will be able to experience it, not just understanding from logical perspective, from your experience. And when you experience that, you would naturally be able to connect with people unconditionally, not just with your partner, with everybody. Because you've just learned the magic, how it was done. So your relationship will become more meaningful because you don't want anything in return. If you are whole, if you are complete, what you're really doing every single day is experiencing different events, different emotions. They are not to be labeled as good experience or bad experience, just experience. So if somebody said something which you feel hurt, so the conditioned self is hurt, your true self is watching, observing that I'm feeling the emotions of hurt. That doesn't make you cry because you are just experiencing it. It's like, chili is spicy and you feel the spice. Then you eat sugar and you feel the sweetness. Then you have salt and you feel the salty taste. You don't have to label whether salty is good or sour is good or chili is bad or spiciness. You're not labeling. They are different tests. And they are all independent to themselves. So when you eat chili, you feel that spice. So just like that, every emotion is different emotions and you experience them for what they are instead of questioning or resisting those emotions and fighting as a coping mechanism with either your own emotions or making other person responsible for what you are feeling. There is no more of that is required once you start operating from wholeness. So as I said earlier, whatever your partner does, the time spent with you or does anything to express the emotions, you're going to enjoy that. And whenever your partner is not present with you, doing something busy with their things which they have to do, you don't become codependent, you don't become jealous, you won't become possessive, because you are whole. You know that you would exist regardless of this entire world. You were always there, right? So the insecurity goes away. So when you're fully secured with just yourself, you're no longer dependent on anybody on a deeper level. And you know that nobody is dependent of anybody. So your partner isn't dependent on you. You are not dependent on your partner. You are together experiencing the life differently. So you are experiencing it together, the life. That is how the world would become, or that's how the relationship would become if everyone starts operating from the real self or the condition, or operating from the wholeness.
Thank you for explaining that. And what is one thing that you would like our viewers or our listeners to take away from this episode?
Thank you for asking this question. What I would like the listeners to feel is, just sit down on a couch or lie down on a bed and relax yourself and ask yourself a question. Are you happy in your relationship? If the answer is yes, celebrate. Okay? If the answer is no, then ask yourself a question. What is that is making you unhappy? What is that is making you sad? What is the reason? And your conditioned self will take you to other person. Like he or she is not doing this or he's not doing that, and I do all this time, and it's always the expectations. Then ask yourself a question: where did you learn to have these expectations? How did it come to you? And if you're in a relaxed state, you will learn, if this is my personal experience I'm sharing. If I know that this is something bothering me, now I'm over those processes, but as part of my journey, I would go to relaxed state, ask myself a question, and then I would see the moment in my past, whether it's my childhood or any point in time when I was growing up, something happened, and I learned that programming, that cause and effect from that event. So, maybe let's say it's my anniversary, for example. I must have watched a movie or something when the way they celebrated that anniversary. So I learned from it. Oh, if there is anniversary, this is what I should be doing for my partner, because it made it made the person happy in the movie. And then I would expect the same reactions. What if your partner doesn't like those flowers? It's just an example. So what I would like every listener to analyze, just go deeper into them yourselves and ask yourself a question. Does it represent that I'm operating from lack, or whether I'm operating from wholeness? And when you try to feel that, what would my life be if I was operating from wholeness? Because if you have everything you ever needed, there could be nothing that you would want, and you will just release any expectations from your system, right? And when you start releasing expectations, what will happen is your life will start becoming more joyful, because the other person has no intention of deliberately hurting you. They are only acting out of their conditioning to feel some level of fulfillment in themselves. Now, what you don't like about that is the byproduct, or it's an indirect experience of yours, but they just wanted to feel better by doing or saying whatever they felt like. Is their conditioning. And what was wanting things and what was hurting within you is also your conditioning, because your conditioning has certain expectations. So when you see that both people were actually acting out of conditioning, but underneath the conditioning, we both are identical, the reactions which you had been experiencing up until now when there is a dispute will change depending on how deeply you're able to see the truth. Whether you're operating from conditioned self, which makes you're lacking and only the love and partner can fulfill you, or whether you are operating from wholeness and you are fulfilled and you're sharing a journey of experience with your partner.